Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Strengthening Families Networking webinar for November 2021. I'm very excited to welcome our partners from the Children's Trust Fund Alliance National Parent Partnership Council today to share resources they've developed and have been working really hard on, and some of their other work as well. So just a quick welcome before I hand it off to them. This is a webinar series we do each month. It's an open invitation. Anyone who's using the Protective Factors Framework or coordinating Strengthening Families efforts or just curious is welcome to join us. We jointly convene these with my organization, the Center for the Study of Social Policy, and the Children's Trust Fund Alliance, who we'll be hearing from today. Each month we have a different topic, usually with guest speakers. We coordinate those based on what's interesting to folks, what we're hearing about in the field, and so your topics and speaker suggestions and volunteers are always welcome. And we do post, we have a very rich archive of all the past webinars that the Children's Trust Fund Alliance maintains. I just created a tiny URL for that, so you can click on that. I will put it in the chat in a moment. Oops. Next month, we have an interesting topic of racism, anti-racism, and the social ecology. I will be co-presenting that with my colleague, Dr. Charlene Harper-Brown. We're actually scheduling that as an hour-and-a-half long to have some time for discussions, and we will do it in a Zoom meeting format so we can use breakout rooms. So you can register for that. I'll put the chat I'll put the registration link in the chat in a moment. And you can just mark your calendar for this time on the second Thursday of the month each month. We've only got a few topics lined up so far for 2022, but it'll be here before we know it. So might as well mark those on your calendar because you're going to start getting those emails about, oh, should we schedule something for early January if you haven't yet. All right, so without any further ado, I'm going to hand off to hear from the folks on the Alliance National Parent Partnership Council. Then we will wrap up with some updates from the Alliance and updates from CSSP. So thank you all for joining us, and I will hand off to Victoria.
So hello, everyone. I'm Edward Casillas. I'm from Tucson, Arizona. Thank you all for being with us here today. The Alliance National Partnership Council has developed a series of parent-to-parent infographics that share strategies on how they use strength-based protective factors in their everyday lives. The back of each infographic shows how each protective factor fits within the framework, how they all work together to help make families strong. Also featured on the flip side is how parent groups across the country have defined the protective factors. As a council, we have really invested in learning more about how to build protective factors in our own lives, and those tools are just an outgrowth of that, what we want to share with you. So one of the priorities areas of the Children's Trust Fund Alliance theory of change is to strengthen and advance parent partnerships in a meaningful way. Since 2008, the Alliance National Parent Partnership Council, the ANPPC, our members serve as partners with the full Alliance team in all aspects of the Alliance mission-driven work. This partnership provides the Alliance with diverse perspectives of parents and enriches the work of the Alliance and its key organizational partners. The ANPPC is unique in this partnership role. The Council's mission is to ensure that all families have the opportunity to thrive, not just survive, by elevating primary prevention efforts, strengthening protective factors, and building collaborative partnerships. So the picture you see before you shows the members of our council. On the left is former council member Lachey Kennedy from Colorado. Next to her is Miss Betty Hawkins Emery from Oklahoma. Next is Victoria Hilt, our co-chair from Washington. Maggie Five from New Jersey. Lucretia Rose, our co-chair from West Virginia. And next to her is Kara Georgi from New York, next to myself. The Alliance works with multiple parent groups in addition to the ANPPC. These also include the BPNN, the BFPP. In addition to introducing the infographics, we will also share briefly about the Alliance Resiliency Project.
The parent-to-parent infographics are a series of tools that the ANPPC started creating to expand upon the understanding of the Strengthening Families Protective Factors logic model and make it equally digestible to parents and organizations. We focused on the strengths of parents and caregivers and what they're already doing to show that it is not only possible but attainable to incorporate the protective factors into everyday life. We asked parents from around the country questions we developed in a survey concerning everyday actions from the framework, making this tool created by parents and used for parents. The first three to be created were parental resilience, knowledge of parenting and child development, and social connections. We are excited to announce that we now have all 5 infographics, each one based on protective factors. We received so many good responses from the surveys, especially on the concrete support in times of need survey. So we've created a separate infographic to elevate the answers to one of our questions.
You might be asking, why do we need this tool? And we actually use that question as a prompt to help create them and as a way to help show how to use them. So in one way, it's a summary tool. So it gives you information concerning those everyday actions that build protective factors, the context inside the framework, and how they might work together in different cultures. In a different way, you can use it as a conversation tool, one question at a time, or all of the questions. You can use it to have conversations about the protective factors and how they intersect and work with each other. Conversation tools also include using it as an icebreaker at bigger meetings and any other sort of conversation you can create to build those deeper partnerships and relationships, one-on-one or small group. Another way that you can use these tools is to help bridge the information between making everyday actions more applicable to everyday life, making it relatable, concrete, and understandable to anyone who's really looking at this information and wanting to use it to change their communities. It also assists with answering the question, how do I take this idea of a protective factor from a concept and make it more operational?
So you're probably wondering how you can find these resources. The ANPPC page is where all the ANPPC tools and resources will be located. And the Parent Voice page is where all the new resources and new tools that we are debuting will be posted for a while until you get used to them, and then we'll move them over to the main page. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper into how these tools are organized and how you can use them. And for that, I would like to turn it over to Maggie.
Thanks, Martha. Each infographic has a section for the definition and value of the protective factor that's located on the top left side of the front of the document. This can provide a common language or understanding when used in a community setting. Social and emotional competence of children is basically a fancy way of saying how we support and build the skills of our children to express themselves, work with others, and manage the many emotions that they feel. We all know how hard it can be to express ourselves and sometimes even to work well with others. And that is why this protective factor is so important for families and children to understand.
Victoria, you're muted.
Thank you, Lucretia. So the next thing that you'll see on the infographics is the everyday actions from the protective factors framework listed, and they're numbered. And on each infographic, we have questions that we created to reflect these everyday actions. And they directly link to the number that they have. So for example, on social and emotional competence of children, the first question, can you share any tools or specific activities that you use when you talk to your children about their emotions? Directly links to help parents foster their child's social and emotional development. Question number 2, what are some ways you model nurturing and support to your children? Directly links to the everyday action, modeling nurturing support to children. Question number 3, what are some activities you have done with your child out in the community? that you feel may be contributing to your child's social and emotional development directly links to everyday action number 3, which is include children's social and emotional development activities in programming. Question number 4, how do you help your child celebrate who they are as a person, directly connects to everyday action number 4, which is help children develop a positive cultural identity and interact in a diverse society. And question number 5, what do you do to help your child manage their emotions, working with them so that they can get to that next step? And that directly connects to responding proactively when social or emotional development seems to need support. And each individual infographic has their own everyday actions with the questions that relate. To show how this tool can be used, we're actually going to model that for you today, because we know that modeling is essential to getting down the protective factors. And so I'm going to actually ask Kara to speak to the question, what are some ways you model nurturing and support to your children?
Thanks, Victoria, and welcome everyone. This is an important protective factor for me as a mom, because when I think about nurturing and supporting my children, I really think it starts with something as simple as the hug that I sometimes give them when they most need it. I also really want my children to understand and recognize that nurturing and support can look a lot of different ways. And I say that because we all have so many emotions and feelings and things we're trying to juggle. And while one of my children needs me right there to help with that nurturing and support, the other sometimes just needs the space. And I want my kids to know that that's okay. I also want to be able to help them understand that sometimes I have some of those very same needs. And so sometimes I'll let them know, you know what, mom needs a hug, because this is why. It's one of those tough days for me. And so it's just giving them an opportunity to see that in action and to put words to some of the things that we do that helped us to be strong as a family. I also want my children to really understand that support can come in different ways, in different formats, and from different people. It's not just one person who can support them as they're going through big emotions. It's many different people who can show up in all sorts of ways to help us be strong as a family. The most important part is I want them to know they don't have to do this alone. I want them to know that there's always going to be somebody to be there to help support and encourage them in any way that we possibly can.
Thank you so much, Kara. Next, I'm going to ask Maggie to answer the question, what are some activities you have done with your child out in your community that you feel may be contributing to your child's social and emotional development?
Thank you, Victoria. So my daughters, Katie and Maisie Lou, and I volunteer our time with Care and Share and Code Blue programs, which provide meals, essentials, resource linking, and even overnight accommodation in severe weather for those who are experiencing homelessness in our community. By doing this, my daughters have learned empathy and compassion and the joy that comes from serving others.
Thank you so much for sharing that part of your life with us, Maggie. And the next person from our council that I'm going to ask to answer a question is Miss Betty. And the question I have for you is, what do you do to help your child manage their emotions, working with them so that they can get to the next step?
Thank you, Victoria. And I believe the best way to handle it is to know your child. Every child is different. So, and my child is unique in the fact that he is a special needs child. And his speech is not very clear. And when he gets upset, he kind of jumbles everything together and his speech becomes unintelligible. I help him manage his emotion first by doing breathing exercises. We call them bubble breaths. He holds his breath in through his cheeks and he pushes it out. After doing this a few times, he's calmed down enough where he can hear what I'm saying. I can understand where he is, and we can help each other understand the feelings that he has. Also, we use emotion boards. You can buy these at dollar stores, or you can even make them yourselves. Faces with smiles and frowns and tears coming down the eyes and angry faces. All of these things help them to understand how he's feeling, helps me understand how he's feeling. And of course, hugs. I love that, Karen, when you talked about hugs, because hugs makes him feel safe. He feels at peace and he can express himself more freely. I believe that emotion boards, gestures, tones of voice, all of these things help when you're helping your child manage their emotions. Thank you, Victoria, and I'm just going to give it back to you.
Thank you so much, Miss Betty, and all of you for sharing examples and illustrating the way that we can show protective factors in everyday life, and for also illustrating how to use this tool. And now I'm going to pass it to Edward.
Thank you, Victoria. You know, speaking about hugs, to this day, I still love hugging my mom. I still feel at peace hugging my mom. So it was really good to hear about the hugs. So each infographic explains how each of the protective factors is essential. And most importantly, is what they do together to build strength and stability in families, in my family as well. We share other ways that the protective factors might appear in relation to the other protective factors. The protective factors work together to help make your family strong. So we've included the definitions for all of the protective factors in the framework on each of the infographics, so it's clear what we mean when we refer to them in relation to each other. This makes me think of my own family and a time when my daughter was struggling with managing her emotions. And for me, I needed to try to understand where she was coming from. And as a father, as a man, it was a little difficult for me. So what I did is I used my social connections, another protective factor, and I reached out for support, my support system, some professional support. So I was able to kind of help her manage those emotions and be there for her, and understand that sometimes she doesn't want a hug. Sometimes she just needs some space. So it really helps to understand that the protective factors work together. Right, the parental resilience, social connections, concrete support in times of need, they all work together to really help us build our family strong and help others as well. And now Kara.
Thanks, Edward. This is probably one of my favorite parts of these infographics, because you see, when I first came to know about the protective factors, there were handouts. They were on the table. They talked about how important these 5 things were to me as a family. But I'll be honest, I didn't really get it. I was like, okay, I get it. That's important, but I don't know what that means in my everyday mom moments. I don't know what that means when I'm helping my child when they're going through something, or when I'm going through something as a mom. And so what I appreciate about this part of these tools is that it really gives an idea of what does this look like in action? Like, what does this look like in different communities? How do different cultures, different backgrounds, different types of parents elevate and show how they're building these protective factors? And so I feel like this section of our tool is really like something that's powerful for all of us to look at, that there's not one way to build these protective factors, right? Like, so often that's what we think. There's this one magic way to help families. There isn't. There's a lot of different special ways that we can elevate how families are showing up for their kids. And when we can do that, that's what helps me celebrate my everyday moments with my kids. There's nothing better than when the small things I'm doing that are making a huge difference for my kids is recognized and just pointed out to me sometimes, because sometimes I don't notice it. And you'll see as we look at the next slide, this is like a treasure trove. It's like a little treasury of ideas of ways that families are building these protective factors. To be honest, I think of this as like my go-to spot. If I'm trying to think of, am I even doing this right now? Because I feel like I'm failing. I feel like I'm not doing it. And so when I go to this, I see opportunities of how I am showing up, how I am building a protective factor. And one of the ones that relates the most to me and my passion, and it's where I learned about protective factors, is the community cafe collaboration. You see, in the community cafe collaboration, you find that you belong, that you matter, that there's something really important that you are bringing to a space. And being able to help not only me feel that, but my kids feel that and have that sense of belonging, that sense that they're loved, the sense that they're understood. because we all know they have very complex feelings and stuff sometimes, and it's hard to understand them. But in this space, we can tease that out. We can understand, how do we meet those needs? How do we best show up for our kids? How do we sometimes just sit in the thick of it? Because sometimes that's all you can do. And so I encourage you, as you think about this tool, look at how different communities have pointed out how families are doing this. Take this into your community and say, what does this look like in the parents' lives of those that I run to when I'm going to the grocery store, I'm at the library, or I'm even just taking a walk or going to the park. Let's figure out, how do we help all families start seeing and pointing out the intentional ways they're building these protective factors in their everyday moments. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Lucretia.
Thanks, Kara. So we spent a little bit of time diving into the infographics. You'll notice that they're one-pagers, they're user-friendly. As Victoria said, they can be used as a conversation tool, a relationship builder, an excellent way to show how protective factors come from an idea into action. But also for me as a certified trainer, it really helps me when I'm trying to help organizations wrap their mind around how parents talk about building protective factors in their own language. It seems like sometimes there is a gap between finding that language that is user-friendly for parents and organizations, and really it's the same exact language. It's just wrapping your mind around the concept of what does it look like in everyday action. And to be honest, we're all really doing those things already, and so it's just being more intentional about how to do those with a purpose. In addition to the infographic series, we also have a social media campaign that goes along with each one of our protective factors. And I really like these because you can reach a broader audience, through social media, tweeting, Facebook, Instagram, but also it helps to really partner well with the infographic series. And then if you are interested in having more of a deeper conversation, we also have, in addition to the social media tools, we have a conversation tool. And specifically, we want to debut the one that goes along with the infographic that we featured today. So the Social Emotional Conversation Guide it provides all the resources that you would need to have an informal and focused conversation about this protective factor. It's designed to be co-led by a parent facilitator and an organizational partner, but you can certainly use it all on your own if you wish. It has 5 questions for basic discussion that are related to all 5 of the everyday actions as part of that logic model. And it really shows you step by step how to prepare for the conversation, key prompts and things to say when you're having the conversation. It also allows for you to record little nuggets of wisdom that happen throughout the conversation. This suite has a PowerPoint with it as well. And it also has a place for you to let us know how you're building that protective factor in your everyday communities and your everyday lives. So I encourage you to check out our infographics, our social media campaign, our conversation guides, any kind of tools that you might need help with that's made for parents by parents or for organizational partners such as you doing the work every day in your communities to build protective factors. And so before we move on into talking about the Resiliency Project, we just want to give a pause to see if you have any questions for us about the infographics or anything else that we've talked about so far. I would ask Kaylin if there's any questions that have came in or if anybody sees anything in the chat box.
We haven't seen any questions come in so far, but if folks want to type them in, we can read them off, or if you would like to speak, you can raise your hand on Zoom and we can unmute you.
Okay, well, if you have any questions, keep them coming in the chat box. We'll have another opportunity for questions after we talk about the Resiliency Project and we can address anything there. So Martha, I'll hand it to you to start talking about the Resiliency Project.
Thank you, Lucretia. During the pandemic, flexible funding to support families has become a real topic of concern. At the Alliance, we were able to implement a model we call the Alliance Resiliency Project, which was made possible through funding from Casey Family Programs. From the beginning, this project was based on strong partnerships and relationships between Alliance senior staff and parent members of the Birth Parent National Network, the Birth Parent Advisory Committee, and the Birth and Foster Parent Partnership. The members of these specific parent groups have often been those who have been involved with and navigated the child welfare system at some point in their parenting journey. The trauma they may have experienced made it even more important that we intentionally build trusting relationships in this project. We hope you will consider this seriously as you begin to develop flexible funding plans for your own states and communities. We're going to look at a diagram that shows how the structure was set up for the project. The leadership team was composed of Alliance senior staff. The advisory committee was especially helpful in the planning and development phase of the project, and include parents from the 3 parent organizations as well as Alliance staff. The project team was a key part of the project, helping to plan and administer the 2 major components of the project, the weekly caring conversation calls and the Touchpoint Parents. I will share a little bit more about Touchpoint Parents, and Lucretia is going to share with you more in depth about the Caring Conversations call. And we will also hear some testimonials from the parents that participated, both in providing the support and those who received the support. So let's look at the Touchpoint Parents. The parent mentors, the peer mentors, we called Touchpoint Parents. They were a key and foundational part of this work. Parents in our 3 parent networks would make an initial contact with our project team, and they were connected with a Touchpoint parent. Always when parents, members connected with the Touchpoint parents, relationships were formed. The project team met weekly with the Touchpoint parents in order to provide them with resources and support for their work. Later, you will hear from Tacoria Jones, one of the Touchpoint parents, as she describes what this support meant to her. Many organizations who are considering a flexible funding model are concerned about what happens to parents that receive this support once the support is no longer there. It's often described as falling off the cliff. This is a legitimate concern, and we were also concerned about that for the parents we served in this project. However, these 6 parents are the real answer to that. They worked very hard to build relationships with the parents they were assigned, which enabled them to think long-term with families about what comes next and to be preemptive and strategic in their planning and thinking. I have had several of the Touchpoint parents tell me lately that since the project ended in June, they have remained in touch with their families because of the relationships they had formed. Yes, organizations can do all of the planning and then pull parents in and tell them what to do. But in this model, parents were involved from the beginning in all of the dreaming, designing, and delivery of our plans. At the Alliance, we made a conscious effort not to assume that we knew what parents needed, but to ask parents to lead in planning and refining the structures as we all learn together. And all of the parents serving in this project were compensated for their volunteer efforts with stipends and honorariums to enable them to commit their time and energy to this work. So what kinds of concrete supports were provided to families? You can see in this slide a short list of some of these things. However, there were too many examples to state here. We dealt with natural disasters like hurricanes and ice storms and how that impacted families who were already struggling during this time. In a minute, you will hear from the perspective of a parent who received support about how our no strings attached approach helped to solidify the relationships we were hoping to build. So we began to witness and understand how the smallest timely support could make the difference between hope and despair. And we could help parents begin to connect to their own strengths. So the Touchpoint parents intentionally worked one-on-one with parents to look beyond their immediate needs towards longer-term outcomes. Yes, We did supply some emergency needs, but always this was followed up with a connection to support families to build their own protective factors and address future needs and concerns. The Touchpoint Parents were the heart of this model. As an organization, to experience success with a model like this, please think deeply about the investment you're willing to make with parents. Our experience has hands down been that parents know how to do this work, especially given the support and necessary structure to work within. Now I'm going to ask Lucretia to share about the second big component of the project, the caring conversations.
So another relationship-based aspect of the Resiliency Project was the caring conversations. These were 1-hour facilitated conversations that took place weekly on a Zoom platform. And over the course of 56 conversations, we had 205 unduplicated participants from 35 different states join us. Of course, we didn't have 205 each week. That was just, we had about an average of 30 folks or less each week. And the content for these calls was carefully and intentionally planned out. It was based on continuous feedback between the project team and the participants on the call. The initial intent was to provide social and emotional support related to the COVID-19 pandemic and to help identify additional needs for parents participating, but it actually turned out to be so much more. One of the greatest barriers that we realized that people faced was overcoming the stigmas of asking for help. And the caring conversations really helped create a space to where asking for help was celebrated and somewhat even normalized. The format was flexible enough that the topics of the week could be set aside if we needed to discuss something emerging, like a national issue, such as the murder of George Floyd. And it was throughout these caring conversations that questions started to surface, like, how is my family going to stay strong during these challenging times? What about racial injustice and inequality? How much stress can my family take and still be strong? The group went through various stages of group development, but after the initial forming stage, it started to really develop a sense of community. And through shared leadership, that became a priority. And a lot of the members began facilitating the calls each week on their own and giving to the content of the discussion. Most importantly, every aspect of the project was built and focused on intentionally building protective factors. So we'd like to share with you what that kind of looks like or what that means. From the very beginning on our intake form, we gathered how families were building protective factors and whether it was intentionally building one or if they needed support in an area of building another. And each time a connection was made, that Touchpoint parent and family member would identify which protective factor it was that they were working on together through their relationship. And although we know that protective factors work best when they're together, you can build one and have a domino effect in building another. Social connections was really heavy throughout the entire project. Between the Touchpoint parents and the project team, between the Touchpoint parents and the families that they talk to, between all of us in the caring conversations. But really, we found that the concrete supports were mostly built through those Touchpoint parent connection processes. In addition to concrete supports and social connections, we were also able to build the social emotional supports of children. It was through an original concrete support request to sponsor a local youth team that we were able to help these children. As you can see here in this photo, it just brings joy to my heart, all these little smiling faces. At first it was about filling a concrete support for a family who was new to town, and it was really important that their team got sponsored. And so through filling that concrete support, we also were able to let these littles here feel a sense of community and not only achieve goals and set them, but score goals from their soccer team. And this helped them build their resilience and just had a domino effect for many protective factors throughout the community. And this really shows what it means to build protective factors in a community when a community comes together to surround the children. And so not only were we able to build social and emotional competence of children through this part of the project of filling concrete supports, but also through a lot of the work that we did on caring conversations with the strength-based parenting book. So weekly on our Caring Conversations, we also intentionally worked with this book to identify each of the parents' strengths. The concept around this book is that you take a Clifton Strengths Finder assessment. It gives you your top 5 strengths for you and one child, and it helps you realize what you are naturally strong or good at. Your natural talents come to the surface. And so through that, we were able to work on knowledge of parenting and child development and understand why things were happening, some of the interactions between children and their parents, and also to help parents build the resilience. Now, we use this concept not only with the folks on our Caring Conversation team, but with our project team as well, and the Touchpoint Parents. And for some of us, it was the first time we ever realized that we actually even had strengths, right? So it was really important in pointing out, hey, you're really good at this, and this is why, because you're naturally good at this. Or, hey, maybe you and your child are not understanding this certain concept together, and you're kind of butting heads, and here's why, because you see things from different talents. So that, partnered with the Protective Factors framework, really helped us strengthen families and strengthen each other and become a community for one another, all through relationships. The relationships was key. So although Martha and I love telling you about the Resiliency Project and all the things that we learned and that we think are important, but the most important part is that you get to hear from the folks who actually did a lot of the boots on the ground work and received some of the concrete supports and protective factors that were being built through every day. So I'm going to show you a video here of Tacoria Jones, and she speaks a little bit about what the strength-based work meant to her and how that was different for her than any other agency she's ever been in partnership with.
The building on strengths was so vital to being, because this was a new thing, right? We were just random folks that said, yeah, we'll try to do this thing together, right? We'll try to come together and make this happen. So I really, the value of learning about myself, learning about my strengths within my team, it really just it multiplied the, it was so meaningful. It's hard to put it in words. It really just multiplied the value of relationship and multiplied the value of what we were doing together. The fact that the Alliance took that time to make sure that we had that very important step of teaming, and not just teaming and say, oh, let's all get together. It was such a vital way of identifying strengths. Hey, you're a leader. Look at that. Look at all these things that, you answered some questions on this survey, and look at all these things those answers said about you. And let's look at how these are important, and how do you see that in your life? And at first I was like, oh, this is going to take a long time, but every moment was worth it, because what it gave me was something I had never had before. And I've had, I've worked jobs, I've done volunteering. No agency ever took the time to say, we value you. We want you to see why. And that, that nailed it for me. The value that was there, the value that was supported in looking at myself, knowing my place in the team, and knowing that we've all had this opportunity as a team to look at and claim our strengths, and to then bring them fully into the teaming effort, into the Resiliency Project effort. It was so powerful.
So the strength-based work really made people not only feel like we were investing in them as individuals, but also that they were valued, that the things they're naturally talented at and doing and contributing to the team were important to us. And also that, it made us better parents. It made us better teammates. It made us better overall, and it deepened our relationships and our communication and helped us learn from each other and how we're building protective factors to make stronger families and stronger teams. This next video is from a member from the BPNN, and her name is Tiffany, and she shares about how her experience was different than other systems that she had ever experienced. I want you to listen for the things that she says made a key difference for her.
So hi, my name is Tiffany Sinka, and I would love to share how genuine the space truly was and how they really wanted to connect and build those relationships with parents, right? To me, that's very important because sometimes the system forgets to really have that relationship with the community and with, parents, right? So to me, when I started seeing those relationships build, that trust getting built, it was different, right? And I had an experience because I went through the system. It was very traumatic. But then when I started getting involved and working with the system and having a chance to be a part of this caring conversation, I got connected to a Touchpoint parent, which at first I was a little antsy and I didn't know what to expect because of my past trauma. But they made it where I felt comfortable, right? I felt comfortable to be honest of my feelings that I'm not sure if I could really ask for help. And I don't want strings to be attached if I do ask for help. But they made it okay to be human. And they made it okay to ask for help without those strings being attached. So to me, that shows authentic relationship and a really caring relationship, because I truly got that support when I really needed it, and there was no fear behind it.
So I think Tiffany's story says a whole lot, right? She had the experience that she had with the system in the past made her a little hesitant to interact with any other system, regardless of the intentions that it has to helping families or the heart or the reason behind it. But her experience made her very, edgy, a little bit on guard to put her trust in anyone. She shared key terms like no strings attached. That if I ask for help, I'm going to have to do something else. I don't really know if I want to ask for help. Is it safe? Am I going to have some kind of retribution for asking for help or being vulnerable? So I think that really her story tells a lot of a difference between this approach for flexible funding and some of the other approaches for funding that helps families. I also feel like her story saying, that it was our space really shows and models the shared leadership concept, the true relationship-based work, and that all was focused on relationship building through protective factors, through small everyday actions to build those relationships. So now I'm going to turn it over to Martha to talk about a few lessons that the leadership team and the project team learned along the way in doing this project.
Thank you, Lucretia. This strategy of using flexible funding to support families is critical more now than ever. It is a great way that your organization can be flexible and develop a model that fits the needs of families that you serve. So here are some important lessons we learned in the Alliance Resiliency Project. First of all, flexible funding should be flexible as you can possibly make it, so that it meets the needs that other resources are not allowed to meet. And then we learned that having a clearly defined target audience, and in our case, it was the members of the BPNN, the BPAC, and the BFPP, really helps establish the essential boundaries of the funding. And then we learned that with our model being very relationship-based, we were able to form strong partnerships between parent members of the three parent organizations and the Alliance staff. Everything about this work was relationship-based. The approach dominated every aspect of the project, including the caring conversation calls and the Touchpoint Parents process, and the strong connection between the Alliance staff and all of our parent partners. I just want to add that for me, this work had a really big impact. It's really changed my way of looking at things, and it was such a privilege to be able to be a part of it. And I think Tacoria Jones, one of our Touchpoint parents, really sums it up better than I can do. And I want you to hear how she shares about what this project meant to her.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. And I have to say thank you to the Thank you to the Alliance and the philanthropic organizations that supported this work, because without agency recognition, this wouldn't have happened. Without saying, these parents need something, let's help them figure out what it is. That is where the value in that relationship is. So I want to give a big thank you to the Alliance for knowing that we as parents can do this. We can help each other, and we can do it successfully. We can do it well. We can do it within range and boundaries and budgets and all those things, that we can do that. So thank you so much to the Alliance and to its supporters for allowing us to be on this journey.
I hope you have enjoyed this, and you can find more information, read the full report, and hear all of the great testimonials, the full videos of the testimonials from our parents and others that are posted on the Parent Voice page on the Alliance website. So are there any questions or anything you would like to ask us? Kara was on the project team, as well as Lucretia, and another parent, Sharonda Selavanoff, was on that project team. So Kara is here and Lucretia is here. So if you have any questions for them about what it was like to be part of this process. And by the way, we are still having Caring Conversation calls every week. And even though our funding has kind of faded away for the moment, but Edward was a Touchpoint parent. Thank you, Edward. It was a big job, right, Edward? and a real privilege to be part of this work.
Thank you all so much. I've seen a few questions come up that have already been answered in the chat about sort of clarifying who was eligible, who was already connected to the Alliance through these various parent networks. And a little bit of a question about sort of which states were represented. So it was a helpful clarification in the chat that the resources are not state specific. They're available for anyone to use. Some of the examples that were given were from particular states that have been engaged in the work. I don't see other questions here unless someone wanted to raise their hand and speak up.
We just have one other slide to share about a couple of updates and announcements. Great. You won't want to miss the Birth Parent National Network annual convening on Thursday, December 2nd. We will be, the topic will be structural racism and current day implications. And it will be convened and led by the Hayward Burns Institute. So there should be a flyer and a registration link in the chat. Also, our national training team from the Alliance will be sharing an open registration training of trainers, a 4-day training of trainers, March 7 through 10. And there is a registration link in your chat, along with a flyer that you can use and distribute to others to let them know about this as well. So thank you so much for listening today. And I hope that if you need anything, you will contact us if you want to follow up with any questions or any discussion about how this, maybe the flexible funding model might work for you. We'd love to talk to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Martha. And thanks to all the members of the ANPPC who shared today. You all have done such great work, and thank you for taking the time to share it with us. Before I jump into some updates from CSSP, I wanted to just keep this lovely picture of Martha up on the screen for a moment, because many of you have heard that Martha will be retiring at the end of this year. And her work with the ANPPC, as you could hear today, has been transformational for many, many parents and for the organization. And her work on strengthening families for the last 15 years has been really critical to the success of the initiative. And so as a colleague and friend, I just wanted to take a moment to thank Martha for all the work that she's done and celebrate what she's accomplished and what she gets to do now, which is spend more time with her grandbabies and enjoy life. So I think Teresa wanted to jump in here as well.
Thank you, Kaylin. I wanted to just also echo the appreciation for Martha in this group, because this meeting on a Thursday every month began when we had the the learning community through the Alliance, and Kaylin was part of that as a partner. CSSP was, and it is such a source of pride and honor that it has grown so much. And so you all have been seeing Martha really month after month, along with partners in crime here.
A very long time.
And never too long. We would keep you much longer, Martha, but we wish you all good things. We will be having a virtual retirement party for Martha, open to all of our colleagues and friends around the country. It's going to be December 17th from 1 to 3. And if you would like to have an invitation, we'll set up a web link and just either put something in the chat or let one of us know, and we'll make sure you have the information to attend. But we want to have a memorable evening for Martha, and I can see her getting nervous about what that might look like. But I just want to publicly say how grateful we are that Martha has been doing this wonderful work these years with the Alliance, and how much we will miss her. But we're really going to keep her close at heart, and we have her phone number, so we'll allow time for grandchildren, but we'll be in touch. Thank you all, and thank you, Martha.
You're both so welcome. And did you say that the party is going to be on the 16th or the 17th of December?
16th.
The 16th.
Did I say it wrong?
I would like to show up for it. But anyway, Kaylin, you have been such a wonderful and amazing partner. And frankly, when the Alliance turned these calls over to CSSP, it was a real relief to me in a lot of ways. And yeah, but I'm so privileged to still have been a part of this and during all that time, and all I will keep my eyes on what's happening with strengthening families, because it is a central part of who I am and things that are really important to me. So thank you so much for your partnership.
Thank you, Martha. All right, other people are chiming in the chat. I hope you're seeing that, and we won't pause anything on the Love Fest, but I'm just going to keep talking, and people can continue to chime in the chat if they like. So I'm just going to share a few quick updates from the Center for the Study of Social Policy, and I will put links in the chat, but it's hard to multitask. So I will put one link in the chat to start with. It's just that we do have an upcoming events page on our website where you can always find the registration information for upcoming events. So one that's next week is our Willis and Friends series. You can listen in on a conversation between Dr. David Willis and other leaders and partners in the field of early relational health. And next week, apropos enough, they will be talking about how partnering with families is key for advancing early relational health, and really talking about what that looks like in different settings. So please join us for that. It's always an interesting, pretty casual conversation between people who have great ideas to share. We also have, sorry, there we go. A few other announcements. The Hope Innovation Network is going to be starting a second cohort in January. So your organization, if you're interested in learning how to apply HOPE, which is healthy outcomes from positive experience, in your work, the focus for this cohort will be on applying HOPE to intake and assessment procedures. So whatever first contact you have with families, how can you make that strength-based and focus on those positive experiences that we know lead to better outcomes? So if you're interested in that, if that piques your interest, please check out the request for applications and get an application in by November 29th. It's really like a few paragraphs. It's not a huge lift to put together an application. And then the process of actually joining the cohort will be in January. November 30th, CSSP is happy to be one of the collaborating partners for a really exciting looking event from 3 to 4:30 p.m. Eastern On November 30th, Daryl Armstrong, the Reverend Dr. Daryl Armstrong, who is a longtime friend of Strengthening Families and many of our organizations, will be in conversation with Bruce Perry and others to talk about the intersectionality of faith, religion, spirituality, adversity, and resilience. So if you are familiar with the book that Dr. Perry wrote with Oprah Winfrey, What Happened to You, they will be talking about that. I see a request for the link. I will get that in the chat as soon as I'm not talking. Sorry about that. And then also wanted to point out some of our partners in Idaho, Maureen Durning and Jane Zink, who do great trainings on strengthening families, will be offering some trainings through Caltrin, which is the California Training Institute. Those trainings are for the California child welfare system, but they're open to anyone. And so Maureen and Jane will be doing a series on the protective factors that you can join into. And once I went to that calendar, I noticed how many of our other partners are offering trainings that are related to the protective factors. So it's a lot of great resources there. If you're looking either to learn more yourself or to send somebody from your staff to learn more, that could be a great option. CSSP is hiring. We actually have 3 pretty exciting roles open right now. So I encourage you to check that out and share with anyone you think might be interested. We are looking for a director of people and culture, a program analyst or senior program analyst to work on our Youth Thrive initiative, which is closely connected to strengthening families, and a program analyst to work on our expectant and parenting youth and foster care program. So if you are, your ears perked up at any of those thoughts, as any of those jobs, please take a look or share it with others. Those, I believe, are all based in our DC office once it's open, but there may be some flexibility on location with some of them as well. And I think that was my last announcement. So I'm going to grab the links that I meant to put in the chat and just encourage you all to check out those links, join us for more events coming up. And you'll also notice I do put a link in to request a certificate for participating. If you just fill out a form with your email address and certify that you participated, and we will get you a certificate. I usually get those out within a week. So don't panic if you don't see something right away. With that, I want to just really thank all of our presenters. It's great to see so many of you from the Alliance National Parent Partnership Council and to hear about the great work you're doing. I know people got a lot out of it, and I really appreciate all that you've been doing. So thank you all. And thanks to everyone who joined us. Have a great day.